Well, it's that time of year again, time that the children get to come home and everybody in the school system gets to get ready for next year. So to talk about what's happened this year and what's coming up, we have some guests. Why don't we start with an introduction?
Sure. Thanks, Al. So my name is Joe Marias, and I'm the chairman of the Milford School Committee.
Thanks, Al. I'm Craig Katsigli. I'm the assistant superintendent in Milford.
Now, why would you do chairman? I mean, that's like volunteering to be the goalie for the javelin team.
Yeah, it was the next step in the progression. So I've been pretty engaged throughout my time on the school committee. I was the vice chairman last year, supporting Mike. Actually, the last 2 years supporting Mike. And so I felt that I was ready to make that transition to the chairmanship. And fortunately, we've got a great committee in place. It's a great team. Everyone's pulling in the same direction. We work very well with the administration. So it's a good group, and I'm really proud to work with all of them.
Well, I mean, we don't hear many searches for four. I mean, there were years where the school committee was always 3 against 3, and somebody was like the Kennedy of the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Somebody would cast the vote. But I mean, it's been pretty quiet lately, which I guess is a good thing.
It is. It's a great thing. I think everyone is on the same page, and everyone's trying to do what they can to support the schools and advocate for the schools, and continue to improve the district. And I think a big part of that is the partnership that we have with the administration, with Craig and Kevin, and the rest of the central office. And we defer to them on a lot of things because they're the experts, right? And fortunately, we have people like Jen on the committee as well that have that educational background that really adding a lot of value to the conversation. So it's a good group. I think everyone's pushing in the right direction, and we're starting to make some good progress.
It's got to be invaluable that you've got experience. You know, you sit there and say you can't command troops until you've been in the field. Well, you got a couple people who have been in the field.
Yeah, no, as weird as this sounds, I look forward to our school committee meetings. It's a chance for me to kind of explain what's going on in the schools, and I don't always have that opportunity. So that's what I look forward to, and I like meeting with these guys on a regular basis.
And we're trying to create an environment that really empowers the administration and the staff, right? We want them to think outside the box. We want them to be creative. We don't want them to be afraid to throw out some new ideas or try something different. And so we want to create a positive environment where they feel comfortable doing that.
Well, I think that's the key if you're really going to get the best out of everybody. Wasn't that the whole idea of educational reform? Was to make CEOs out of the principals?
Exactly, and I think one of the things that we're going to look forward to next year is trying to bring principals and teachers to the table and let them show off kind of what's going on. We do it usually at the end of the year where they let us know what's happening through the schools throughout the year, but to do it more throughout the year I think would be beneficial for everybody.
Well, again, when you start thinking about how to get the team together, you don't get to pick your team as much as you'd like to, right? Because they're elected. So you have to play the team that's given to you on the field, so to say. But then getting that environment set up.
Yeah, it requires a lot of communication, right? You got to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And if there are issues or differences of opinions, you work through them in a respectful way. And you try and keep everybody focused on the end game, which is enhancing the educational experience for our students. And as long as everyone stays focused on that, then we'll continue to move in the right direction.
Well, you also have a good mix. I mean, you've got a couple people who are educators out of the 7. You got some business people. You got some municipal people. So it's a good mix that you can draw on.
Right.
As we were saying, it's got to be really helpful for you. You're living the role that you're asking the staff to live.
Right. That I have found that to be a beneficial part of my role, and what I do in my day job definitely contributes to what I'm able to share with the school committee and vice versa. I've learned a lot from Milford and what we're doing in Milford. that's helped me professionally too.
But now your day job,
My day job.
let
I'm
people
school
know.
principal. My other full-time job.
I mean, that must be interesting to sit there and say, okay, during the day I'm on this side of the table, and then at night I've got to go to the other side of the table and ask the principals in Milford.
I don't know how she does it. I really don't. It's amazing. I can't imagine how many hours that Jen puts in doing that. So.
But I think all the three roles, well, by the three roles, I mean school committee, my job as a principal, and my role as a parent. I think they all, and you two are parents too, and you know, but I think you get better at every one of those roles because of the combination of them all. I tell myself that anyway.
Maybe that's where I screwed up. I never got better at parenting here because I wasn't a teacher.
But it's helped me to understand things from different perspectives.
Now, I'm so happy that I hear I won't be getting comments thrown at me like we get one electron a minute
No.
rolling down the internet wire at the high school. Talk to us about the program going on.
Oh, it's starting. So it's actually looks like the first step is tomorrow, where the company's going to come in. There's going to be a company that comes in. It's going to look at all the wiring and rewire the entire high school. And it's not just simply throwing wires up into the ceiling. They're going to take down all the old wiring and rewire it the way it needs to be done. So hopefully it'll be as fast as any network out there at the high school and at Brookside. So once that happens, all of our schools will be completely wireless. State of the art, completely wireless.
I mean, that's critical with the new Chromebook initiative, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's just one of many steps that we've taken to improve the infrastructure within the district. I mean, you've been part of a lot of these conversations over the last 2 years, and you know, it all started with the E-rate application and getting that filed and receiving that grant from the federal government, and that was a little over $600,000. We brought in a new director of IT, Matt Josephs, who's been a great addition to the team, and he's got a lot of energy, and he's driven a lot of change across the district. We installed the fiber loop last year. With the grant money that we received for E-rate, we upgraded Stacy, we upgraded Memorial. And we're now working on the high school and eventually Brookside. And then, of course, Woodland came on board last year, which was completely outfitted with the latest technology. So we're going to be in great shape once the school year starts in the fall.
Now, we heard a lot about how important the Chromebooks were. What is that? To a layman, what is a Chromebook initiative?
Well, really, it's a tool. I mean, a Chromebook is a tool to allow students and teachers faster access, a more broad access to information, both to receiving information and creating information that they can share out with others. So it's taking in knowledge and then showing application of that knowledge and deep understanding of that knowledge through either the programs that they're using or products they're creating, like slideshows and presentations. But I think, you know, we all know you can't function in this world without access to technology. That's just the way the world functions. And probably if we haven't been in great shape at the high school, our kids are finding better access in their homes, which is pretty unusual. You know, we all know kids take to technology far more quickly than we do as adults. But it's, you know, you don't do Chromebooks. Chromebooks are a tool and a vehicle to help promote the learning.
Well, I remember the first step we took, we had to educate people that computers are disposable. This is not a capital asset that you buy and keep for 10 years.
No.
And that was hard. The one that convinced me when the old superintendent wanted to lease new computers for the media center was my own daughter. You know, because I went and I said, tell me about the media center. Well, it's a great place. We get together. I said, no. How much work do you do in there? She said, well, you can't do any work in there. I said, why? She goes, come on, Dad. The computer's in there. You know, Paul Revere, when he installed them, he meant well. But I can't use any real programs. You know, and for her, real meant the latest version of Publisher or PowerPoint, not one from 5 years ago.
Right.
So, I mean, that was step one, and it really was a tool.
Right.
You know, the other thing I thought I heard is it really does give the kids state-of-the-art real-time access.
Correct. So, you know, for example, I was in a middle school class earlier in the spring, and they were talking about the Sahara Desert. And the teacher had these Google, I don't know what they're called, goggles, I guess, but they're called something else. And the kids were actually in the Sahara Desert looking around, which is, it's so incredible to see kids just experiencing that. I mean, you can't smell it, obviously, or taste it, but you can be right in the middle of wherever you want to be like that. You know, a kid brings something up and says, hey, geez, what is this like? And immediately the teacher could bring them there.
Well, I remember the time when, you know, we tried to turn over textbooks
Right.
as often as you could afford. But, you know, a couple of kids saying, what's the Soviet Union?
Right.
You know, this map doesn't look like the one up on the wall. Well, no, because that book is 8 years old or something.
Right.
So I can see real-time access
Right.
being valuable.
And the other thing that it affords us using Google Classroom is the opportunity for teachers and students to communicate in real time on the learning. So a student produces an assignment or a reaction to something in class, and the teacher can immediately give feedback electronically. So I know this year my daughter was submitting papers, and at one time she said, "Oh, the paper's due on a Saturday morning." And I said, "How can a paper be due on a Saturday morning?" And it was, because that's when the teacher said they had until, and even over the weekend there were comments coming back and forth to help her improve her writing.
So we made a mistake in budgeting that we didn't budget 6th grade or 5th grade this year. We had to scurry to make that happen.
The kids that are coming up from 5th grade into
Yeah.
6th grade next year.
I
so
remember
they'd
we
have
went
to-
through and it's like, okay, so through Woodland, they have tablets, and then we're going to send them to Stacy, and they'll have stone tablets
Yeah.
and chisels. But we worked together, and we did all of Stacy, so
ninth
there would be
grade.
no disconnect, right?
Correct. So,
Yes.
so next year when we open school, we'll have grades 3 to 5 at Woodland, and then 6 through 9. It was important to bring the 9th graders in, because by the time they get to 10th grade, they're going to have to take the MCAS, and it's going to be online. There's no more paper.
No more
MCAS.
paper?
Starting next year, no. So it's important to get those Chromebooks in their hands right away.
So that's why the 9th grade was added on
Correct.
this spring.
Yep.
Right.
You know, I think, and Al, something that is overlooked with Chromebooks, you know, the kids have the tools. They have them outside of school. But I think what we take for granted as parents, as educators, is nobody's teaching them how to use them appropriately once they open them out and come out of the box. And I think that's another thing that is very important with putting them in the hands in school, because we can teach kids how to use these things appropriately. And I don't know, I just think that has been overlooked.
And it does provide some equity too, because there are some students that don't have access to those types of devices that now will have access. So it levels the playing field a little bit there.
Now, how does that work if I can't afford at home that level of access? So when I leave the school, now what happens?
So the Chrome, they could still work on the Chromebook, and then when they get a wireless connection, everything automatically feeds back up. So if they go home, they can still work on a project at home, and then when they
They
come
can
back
take
and
their
they get
Chromebook
Wi-Fi,
home?
yeah, I'll be able to take their Chromebook home.
Oh.
In middle school and high
Yeah.
school, not at Woodland. Woodland
Well.
they stay. Yeah, Woodland they stay.
Somehow 3rd graders,
You
I
don't
don't know
trust
that they need
Right.
to be taking Chromebooks home.
No.
But the middle school age kids and high school kids.
But that
will be able to
really
take them
is
home.
a benefit, because years ago, Sue Edmonds came to us and needed to upgrade the library infrastructure. And she said, candidly, there's a lot of kids who have good technology in the school, but when they go home, for whatever reason, don't. So they all go to the library, and the library was not set up to handle that many devices simultaneously. So we had to expand the infrastructure there. But this sounds like a much better deal.
Well, the other thing I wanted to add in terms of your question about the 9th graders is they have had carts of Chromebooks at Stacy, so they have had some use of this. And I know that when you have carts of things, teachers have to share them.
Right.
And so everybody invariably wants them at the same time, no matter what their purpose is for. But the minute that you start momentum with teachers, the more they learn, the more, and we talked about offering PD, and part of this when we talked about should we do one grade at a time or should we do multiple grades, one of the things, the benefits we talked about was offering professional development for teachers so they become more astute in how to use these to approach learning. And once you get their enthusiasm going, it catches on like wildfire. So to make sure that all their students have access and no one's saying, well, I can only use the third period but not fourth period, that kind of kills it. So I think
Well, it
doing
made
this way-
sense when you said you want to do a unit at a time. So all of Stacy.
Yes.
Because, I mean, obviously the question comes up, can't we do 1 year every year and just roll it? But it didn't seem very efficient.
By the time you roll out to everybody, what are we, almost 10 years down the road, almost,
Right.
you know? So we lost that whole group.
Going back to professional development, it's not as effective if you're not able to utilize the tool, right?
Right.
So we'd be providing professional development to 7th graders and 8th grade teachers, even though they wouldn't be using them essentially if we phased it in. So this
Right.
makes the training that much more impactful.
And it gives, my understanding, you can expand some of the programs in the school. I mean, that virtual classroom always excited me. You know, mainly because I'm one of 3 in my class that got thrown out of Milford High. And Paul Raftery, God bless him, came to us and said, okay, I'm sending you to Dean. Because we ran out of science courses.
Yeah.
You know, there were 3 of us that had taken all the science courses. We wanted more. And he said, the only way I can get you more is he signed us up at Dean, back then Dean Jr., to do biology and chemistry, which was great. But we had to go to Franklin every day. Now what I see, you're taking care of kids. Because we always talk about special needs being the kids who need a little help to get to the mean. But I never want to forget the top 10%. Those are special needs too. You know, our
Absolutely.
next Nobel laureates, they need a little extra attention, and I would think the Chromebooks makes it that much easier.
Yeah, it really allows you, and you could probably speak to this more effectively, but it really allows you to personalize the
Exactly.
learning, right?
Yeah.
And we had some 6th graders this year that blew through the 6th grade math curriculum, moved down to the 7th grade curriculum, blew through that, moved on to the 8th grade curriculum. So to your point, you want to challenge these kids as much as you can, and you want to push them as far as you can, and this allows you to do that. So that's another one of the key advantages.
Well, I've heard that too, because the teachers no longer have to take Sally and send her down to the library, go figure out something to do, you know, to do special projects. I love the idea that you can take Joey or Sally, who are the top end, and push the living heck out of them. Like you say, okay, you're done with 6? Here comes 7th. You're done with that? Here comes 8th.
Right.
I mean, I would imagine that just helps not only the kids, but the teacher manage the classroom, because if you're too bored, not good things can come out of it.
Agreed. It makes, it is, you know, truthfully a lot of work too for teachers to be thinking ahead of, all right, I'm personalizing instruction now for 25 kids, and what's happening over here with this student is not the same thing that's happening over here, is not the same thing that's happening over here. So if you really think about it, teachers are planning 25 different lessons for kids just to meet their needs. So it is going to take a lot of professional development for teachers to get through that.
Yeah, but with these programs, you're giving the teacher a tool
Yep.
that maybe they stand a chance of personalizing. Because if you tell me you're personalizing 25 lesson plans every day, I don't know that I'll buy on that
Yeah.
they're all optimized.
Right.
Just physically, how can you do it?
No, but I think with the purchase of some licenses for programs like IXL Math and Raz Kids, which is a reading program, those kind of things, kids can move independently. They have the pre-placement.
With these new tools,
Right.
now
because
I'll buy
they
on.
can all access them, right.
You know,
Right.
asking a teacher to make up individual worksheets and all from 25
No.
different,
Right.
just
Well,
physically.
that's not realistic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but you know, then the difference too with a computerized program is the computer does, I mean, will correct whatever it is for you. So the teacher now spends more time analyzing whatever it is rather than correcting it.
God forbid
Which is
teachers
perfect.
should be spending time teaching,
Right.
not doing mundane
Right.
work.
Right.
Right.
Well, the beauty of this is a teacher can call a small group and specialize or individualize that, whether it's kids that need to be pushed or kids that need remediation, while other kids are actively engaged in either some of these programs or whatever else. I mean, I don't want us to see kids just sitting in front of a
Right.
screen all
Oh,
day,
right.
but with purposeful planning,
Well,
there's
I mean,
a
the
real
way
use for that.
Woodland's designed just hit me to have, I got a classroom,
Yeah.
and I got that little classroom that
Mm-hmm.
if I need to put 4 kids in for a special project, they're there, but they're still right there. I can see them, I can
Right.
still help.
Yeah.
I mean,
And then bigger spaces outside of that where you can bring 2 classes together. And it's great.
That's ideal.
Yeah,
Yes.
and that's what we're seeing a lot of that collaboration too, which is the other benefit of having the technology, and you see it in the real world. When you're probably working with people. Actually, we were just talking about this before we came on. You're working with people throughout the entire world, so you could be on a conference call or a WebEx, whatever it might be, working with a team of people that are in different time zones, and they're learning those skills now, working with kids in their classes, kids in other classes,
Kids across
in
the
different
country.
schools. Exactly. So they're developing those skills and understanding how to use that technology effectively.
So now, I understand how you're taking care of those kids. One of my concerns about the current structure in education is we do everything in the world to take care of the academic side, the kids who do well in academia. We do everything we can when you have special needs kids that need help for the middle. But I always get nervous, and I heard you're putting a new banking program in because, and again, I'll bring it personally, people like my father. He came from the old country. Put him in an organic chemistry class, he's not going to do well. Put a tool in his hand, he was an artist. But yet when I look, I get nervous because unless you're the top 20% of Milford students, you're not going to qualify for Blackstone Valley to get into a program. So I've always been worried that we got a layer of kids who we just can't service, but the hospitality program,
Yeah.
now I hear you're expanding it to a new program.
Business and banking program. Milford Federal, we partnered with Milford Federal. They're putting in a branch at Milford High School. They're going to be running courses through it with our business teachers at the high school. So it's going to be exciting. And I think, I can't remember how many we already have signed up, but I know it's full. So
Full already,
full already.
before it starts.
Full before it starts.
How wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great program. It's the next in line following the hospitality management program. We also have a relationship with Waters that
Yeah.
starts this summer. We have a student who's going to be doing a co-op there over the summer, and that's going to also turn into an internship, I think, when school starts. And that came about through a relationship with the Blackstone Valley Educational Foundation and Waters. So the goal is to see that increase as well, or grow, I should say, beyond the one student that we have there now. So they'll get some experience in a manufacturing environment. But you're absolutely right. Like, we need to continue to look for those types of programs to give these kids that hands-on experience. And that leads into a whole other conversation about Blackstone Valley and who they should be accepting. So we could probably talk about that for a couple hours.
World peace is a wonderful concept,
Right.
but I don't think I'm going to worry about it for the next 4 or 5 years. So realistically, we can have the philosophical debate over people like my dad that absolutely would have fallen through the cracks if you don't give him something. But we're not going to fix that problem in the lifetime. Parents care about, okay, my student graduates in 2021. What are you doing between now and then?
Right, and I will say that beyond the coursework, there are other things that the district is offering. So we've heard a lot about the global
Citizenship program.
citizenship program. I know I attended the 8th grade promotion ceremony, and Kevin McIntyre came and spoke, and his entire message was about get involved, find something to become involved in. And I think the high school has done a great job of marketing the different things that are available. So not every student is an athlete, but so I'm the parent of an incoming 9th grader right now. And all I can tell you is there are group chats and all kinds of things where there's outreach from the high school to these kids that are coming up into 9th grade for a whole host of
great.
things.
And Jen,
it's
thank
that
God.
connectivity.
Because I think one of the things that the school committee previous was failing is selling our schools.
Right.
You know, I mean, it drove me nuts when I see, you know, BVT and other people coming in, talking to the 8th graders about how wonderful life is there. Yeah, and you can also go to Milford High.
Right.
Wait a minute.
Right.
We ought to be proud of what we offer at Milford. Shame on us if we're not.
Right. No, I see this class of kids coming up as very engaged and very excited, and I see the high school is really reaching out and promoting itself as a welcoming place. And
Yeah, and when good Dr. Legore came on the show when he was running for school committee, he said one of the things he was going to do is help sell the Milford school system.
they've done a great job with that. He has.
How's
Gary
it working? Because all we ever hear about, I mean, just recently in the Globe, it talked about how school choice is such a boon to so many different community budgets, except Milford. You know, and the Globe brought out a point that the Gazinta does not match the Gazauda. But you guys have been putting in some effort to try and balance that, right?
We have. And I think we're seeing now data that's showing that we have a shift, but once kids move out or have moved out, they're not coming
Well, you're not
back.
getting,
Right.
once I put my child in community X, to bring him or her back,
Right.
I mean, you've lost that kid for 6, 8 years.
So I think it's going to take some time for that to, and their siblings too, because most likely the siblings are going with them. So it's going to take us a while to see that number come back to where it needs to be. I think the new Woodland will have something to do with that. In the high school, like you said, the outreach at the high school I think has been great, and I think that's typically where you see the kids leaving. So.
Yeah, and there's a big focus. Obviously, we spent a lot of time at the high school and building those relationships between the high school and the 8th grade and 7th grade kids. But we're really working towards expanding that across the entire district, right? We want every kid in our district, whether they're in kindergarten, 5th grade, 8th grade, or the high school, to feel like they're a part of something, that they're all Scarlet Hawks, and that they want to play for Milford High, or they want to be in the Milford High School band, or they want to be part of a club in Milford High School. So we're trying to get the high school kids to build those relationships with those younger kids who look up to them, so that they want to be part of that someday, and they want to leave their mark on the Milford school system
Well,
at
I
some point.
remember our previous superintendent, he who shall not be named. But, you know, Bob Trombley was the first one I saw really embracing in many years the whole student body. When he got up at the orchestra night and starts waving his baton, I had no idea if he was accurate or, you know, whatever the technical evaluation would be, but I could see the effect it had on the parents. That their superintendent was there, not just at a football game, not just at a baseball game. There's nothing wrong, he should be at the athletics. But he was the first one that you started really seeing at all the events. And I think Kevin has continued that.
Yeah, and the staff has embraced it too. The entire staff, all the principals, the teachers, Peter Boucher, Nadine Pomeroy, like they've all bought in and they see the value in that because it's going to end up benefiting them in the long term as well by growing their
And
programs.
hopefully someday, hint, hint, the next superintendent
Right.
will continue it. But you know, you start looking at what we offer, you know, and some of the things I think people get nervous about is they read about all these kids coming into Milford who don't speak English, who are from a different culture, and they worry that that's going to affect the quality education that their children get. What do you say to them?
I say no way, absolutely no way. We have, what I think that the culture of Milford brings to the students is just that experience of being with all types of people, you know, not just somebody that looks like me or dresses like me or talks like I do, but the experience of learning from Joe and Jen and hearing about your culture and learning about Milford. I think it adds more value than we can put a number on, honestly.
And I remember, and I'll admit it, as much as I want to care about my 4,200 kids, our 4,200 kids, I worried more about the first two. It's just, I'm a father.
Of course.
And when we hit 8th grade, I mean, I've said it a number of times, it was Tommy Davern. And if you remember Tommy, that what you inherited was his. He took such pride. And I was on the parent council, the school council, and I remember seeing in the paper how bad our MCAS scores were. And I went to Tommy, I said, Tommy, why do your MCAS scores suck? And it was great, because, you know, typical quiet and shy Tommy just came back and said, because you're ignorant. I said, great, educate me. And he showed me that, he says, I'll put my top kids up against any town around us. But what you have to understand is there's a bimodal distribution in Milford. You get one curve of the top kids, and they're getting into Ivy League schools and doing as well as everybody. And then you got kids who have just come over. And by the way, they're not going to score as well on an MCAS as the kids who've been in this country the whole time. It's going to take them some time. But what they report is an overall average. So Milford doesn't look as good. But I was really impressed, because when I saw the scores, our top kids were doing as well as any town around here.
Yeah, and that's a challenge. That's the greatest challenge that we face from a marketing perspective, because many people put a lot of weight on those scores. And we've had people that have raised some concerns, but when we have them in to meet with Craig or meet with Kevin, and they have a conversation about the scores and they really drill into it, it starts to click that, okay, now I get it, you're right. But the average person is just looking at some score on a website someplace.
Town next
isn't gonna
door is
take the
50
time.
points higher than you. Must be a better education.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the challenge, is explaining that to the general public, so that they understand it, that those numbers don't tell the whole story, that there's a lot more to it, and that you have to look much deeper than that. And you know, if you, just going back to the conversation we were having before, you know, if we have, so we have students that are going to Blackstone Valley Tech as an example, right? And they have a process where they evaluate the students and they accept students that meet certain requirements, right? But they tend to be very good students that are going to score well on these exams, right? And then the students that truly need a vocational education, who probably don't have any intention of going to college, that they want to go into some sort of trade, aren't able to get into BVT, so they're staying in Milford. And it could be an ELL student, it could be a special ed student, whatever it might be.
Could be just an
It could be an
average
average
person
student.
like my
Right.
father, who just academically, my father was not going to do well in organic chemistry, plain and simple.
Right.
Right.
But yet, you know, he taught me values that I can never, I just hope I come close to teaching my kids those same values. And he gave me the biggest house in the world. He filled it with such care and emotion that, you know, when I think back at the little house we had on Mystic Lane, it feels like it was 30,000 square feet tall, you know. But now I worry, do people like that get addressed? And I like the hospitality. You know, even Mike Walsh with the tie to Imperial Chevrolet.
Right. Yeah.
So if I want to be a mechanic and I don't have great academic grades, I still got a chance.
Right. Yeah, in the early college acceptance program that we have is also very beneficial too, because now you have students that are able to take some classes at the college level and get credit at a much more reasonable cost, essentially free. And so we may have more students that are going to be able to go on to college because now they can afford it, right? Because they've already banged out some credits. They can go and for maybe 2 years and get a degree afterwards. So that may help with some of the numbers as well.
Eventually, we're not there quite
Right.
yet, but eventually, we like to see kids graduate high school with a year of college coursework under their belt.
Oh, that's worth 60 grand right there.
Right there, yeah.
Yeah.
30 to 60. But you know, it's funny because you all are prejudiced. I'm prejudiced towards our 4,200 kids. So when I look at who's really judging how well we're doing, it's the colleges. So if kids applying as seniors weren't able to get into good schools, I don't care what you say. You're not doing your job. But again, the data point I had was when my oldest applied, she got into every school she applied to.
And this year we had a great showing, right? We had a student get into Yale, a student get into Princeton, a student get into Harvard. So 3 of the top schools in the country. And there were many more that were in what's called level 1 schools that ended up
A
getting
lot going to the
accepted.
baby
So-
Ivies,
Right, exactly, yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And you sit there and say, I mean, we had a couple kids go to Holy Cross that I happen to know. I was really happy to see 2 from Milford go.
Yeah.
But when I look at the criteria to get into some of these schools, we were doing the scholarship review for the Worcester Club, and I remember we had 32 applicants. And I laughed. I said, well, there's 2 deadbeats. Throw them out. And I said, look, this girl had a B+ freshman year. She's obviously a slacker. And this guy's a bum. He had a B and a B+.
Yeah.
But it just hit me like, oh my God, 30 out of 32, their lowest grade was an A. And our kids got in.
Yeah.
Made me feel really proud.
Right.
You know, and again, I go back, I remember asking Jose Vieira when he was assistant superintendent. Back then, he was principal of Brookside. I said, okay, if I bring my daughter into Brookside, how do I make sure she's getting the best education available? And he was simple. He said, get involved.
That's a good point. Talk to the teacher, you know? If you're concerned, the best thing a parent can do is ask the teacher, you know, above anything else. If you're in constant communication with your teacher, your child's teacher, you're going to get everything you need to know.
Well, I mean, being part of the, what was it, school advisory council?
School council, yeah.
School council,
Yeah.
best thing I ever had. Because once a month, it was, you know, an hour or 2 a month. No big deal. Anybody can squeeze that out. I got to meet with the principal of her school once a month. I got to feel and understand what was going on at the school. And then it was always easy if I wanted to meet the teacher herself or himself. When you got, you know, Mr. Consigli made the phone call to say, can you meet with them? Boy, I got immediate attention. But, you know, the key was I understood what was going on. You know, and I felt better, you know, that I did understand. And, you know, when you went into the backpack, assuming Jimmy Hoffa was in there, because I don't know what they carried in those backpacks,
Yeah.
you know, and start pulling out notices, I actually understood what they meant.
But I think you make a great point, and I thought about this earlier, so I'm glad you came back to it. I can't even quantify how many events were held for families this year. You could be out at a family event in this district, sponsored by this district, every night of the week, if you care to be that involved. Between the Girls Rising, what's the screenagers.
Yep.
There's already been a parent meeting about the Chromebook initiative. All the individual school, it's literacy night, it's math night, it's science night. And there's something for families all the time, with translators at them for families who need support. The information about the school breakfast program, I mean, that's been out, or the summer lunch program.
Summer lunch program with the YMCA.
So
yeah.
I think that, you know, the district is really trying to engage families, and there is no excuse to not be involved because there's so many different ways you can.
And I think the most important thing I saw was that, again, I think of my parents. You know, they came over from the old country. They had no idea.
Right.
My father would get a notice, somebody would tell him, you have to be at the school Monday night to support your son. He'd put on his little hat, his little suit, and he'd show up. No clue.
Yeah.
You know, because it was all in English. He had no idea. Today, with all the translators and the help, parents can actually get involved.
Right. We'd love to see it too. You know, unfortunately, I never, as a principal on a school council, I never had an EL family, which I wish I would have and could have, but it just never happened. But I think we're getting there. I think we're getting to the point where non-English speakers feel comfortable coming to meetings like that. At least I hope to think so.
Yeah. In a perfect world, you'd have everybody engaged, right? All parents and families would be involved in their child's education, but the reality is that's just not the case. And people live very busy lives and busy schedules, and they have other priorities, they have other things going on. And so as a district, one of the things that we've talked about is, we want to continue to have these events. We want to continue to encourage families to get involved and participate. But what are the other ways that we can get the information out to them, right? So is it recording some of these sessions so that they can then watch it online on their own schedule, or is it putting information out on the internet site so that they can access it? The more information we can push out to them, I think the better, because we can't all make it to these events.
Well,
Unfortunately.
and again, I think about it, when we were kids, the vast majority had mom and dad living at home. I mean, I was always amazed, when we talk about coaching before the show, the single parents. Now, we were fortunate, it was 3 against 2.
Yeah.
My darling bride, my sainted mother, and me against 2 girls. So we had almost parity. But I sit there and say, if you're a single parent, either mom or dad, with a couple kids, I don't know how it's physically possible to keep up. So anything you can do so that at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, they get a breather and they can just watch it online, I think is great. And especially if you can do it in multi-languages so that
Right.
parents who do care, and a lot of the families, you talk about an EL family, well, that would be mine. I always joke and say, I never knew what this funny language was when, you leave the house, it's like, boy, these kids are dumb. They don't know how to speak Portuguese. How can they not speak Portuguese?
Right.
And then you learned not the whole universe speaks the language you speak at home. So we had to adapt and learn English. Says I get a kick, yep, English my second language. As if you ask my daughter, she'll tell you that's because my grammar shows it. But but anything you can do to get those families more and more involved. Well, how's it working? How is school choice? What's the trend?
So it's moving in the right direction. We're seeing the net number improve. So I think the number of kids leaving, I think, only dropped by 1 or 2, but the number of kids coming in increased by 12 or 13. So the net number improved. And this fall, I think we'll have those numbers were from last year. So this fall, I think we'll have a better sense for how what type of impact the marketing had, because this was the year that we were very aggressive with the marketing. So we'll see how things shake out.
In another year of Woodland being open, last year was the first year. Hopefully that's attracting people to come to the school. And the Chromebook initiative too. I think that's an attractive.
Well, I think what you said was profound. If I lose a kid in the 3rd or 4th grade, they're gone. And their brother and their sister. So, when you think of the old Woodland School, oh my God, if you remember the wars, only the select teachers go to Woodland because it's so much better than all the others. And then when we got back, it's like, well, Woodland's the worst school infrastructure. I mean, you laugh, but if I was a parent and I'm looking at 4th grade options, I don't know that the old Woodland would have gotten me very excited.
Right.
Whereas today, oh my God.
Right.
Well, I want to clarify something. I think maybe looking at a building is one thing, but I think going in and meeting the people that are in the building, I think it probably would have changed your mind.
Yeah,
Just
but that's what I
talking to those
say.
people.
A lot of people are looking at what's online on test
Exactly.
scores.
Yeah.
Right.
What is the building infrastructure? What's the reputation? And they never get past that.
Yeah.
I happen to have gone in, because I do believe Milford is the center of our universe, and talked to Jose Vieira. Now, my parents knew his parents from the old country, and also there was some trust. But after talking to him, I walked out feeling really comfortable that my daughter was going to get a good education at Brookside.
And that's my hope. If anybody's thinking about school choice and going to another community, I'm hoping that they're not just looking at a website and going off of statistics. They're going in, they're meeting with whoever it is in the other town, and they're getting a tour of Milford schools and the principals in the school, and give it a fair chance, really.
Well, then I would challenge any parent who really wants to make an educated decision to call central office
Yeah, absolutely.
and challenge you like I challenged Jose and then Tommy to say, okay, the most valuable thing in my life is sitting here.
Yeah.
Why should I trust you with my child versus somebody else? I'd love to see them come to you and let you explain what we
Right.
have here in Milford.
Yeah, and that's the culture that we're trying to create. We want parents to feel comfortable reaching out to the administrators, to the principals, to have those types of conversations. And to your point, that new state-of-the-art building may be what it takes to attract someone, but then once they get in there and they start interacting with the teachers, they start interacting with the administrators, they start seeing the breadth of programs and services that we have to offer, that's what's going to keep them here, right? Whether it's academics, music, art, sports, whatever it might be, having that breadth of services and programs will ultimately be what keeps the kids in the district. But if that shiny new building's what gets them to consider it, then that's
Whatever it takes to get them in
Right.
the door.
right.
You know, it's like getting a recommendation gets you the job. Your performance keeps the job.
Right.
So if we can get them in the door, then it's your performance that is going to dictate whether or not they trust us.
Right. When you look at it from an academic perspective, and you look at the programs that we talked about, you look at all the AP programs that we have, that we offer, the AP classes that we offer, the hospitality management program, the new business and banking program. There are a lot of programs there. Then you look at athletics, and we offer so many different options to kids at the high school level. And now we're growing that at the middle school level as well. I think we now have 5 or 6 sports at the middle school level.
In all different seasons.
All different seasons, right? And then you start looking at what we're doing, what Nadine's doing from a music perspective. At Woodland, she now has specialists. So she has retired teachers like my father-in-law, Mr. Crowley, who's down there teaching kids how to play the sax. So it's there's just so many opportunities for these kids throughout the entire
That used to
district.
be the highlight when they got to high school and they had that all the unified concert.
The
Talk
vertical
about deja
concert.
now when you can remember the first time my daughter picked up a violin and it really did sound like she was pulling the tail off a small farm animal. The screeching but somehow that just seemed wonderful. And then you could just watch each grade, the progression. And the Mr. Crowleys and Nadine, the Palmer. Wow.
Moffat. Yeah.
Mr. Moffat, stuck in a closet at Woodland. The poor janitor having to wait till he would take a break, sneak in, get his cleaning supplies, and sneak out.
Yeah.
And you look at where we've come. I remember we gave up the stage at Woodland because we needed to make it a school classroom.
Yeah, walled it off.
Walled it off. And now you look at what's available, it's pretty amazing.
Well, and on the senior awards night, so many seniors were there and awarded scholarships and just really high-profile academic awards. But the band was also there that night, and the playing was stellar. But what I remember being struck by was the number of kids who got off the stage when it was time for the band to play. How many kids walked right off that stage to take their seats in the pit with the band? Dozens and dozens of kids who were involved with music all the way up, and those are the kids that really excelled in all areas.
And I think that's the key, is that in the Milford system, anywhere from jocks to nerds, there's a place. I mean, I have no musical talent at all, but I'm very happy that there's a place for the kids who are much more gifted than I am
Yeah.
to experience music. The athletes, the nerds who enjoyed being in chemistry lab. That was me. But there was a place, and there still is.
The art. We were talking to
Art.
Liz earlier, right? The opportunity to maybe do some kind of artwork in here, in the studio.
And that was great. That's a great example because got a new studio coming in, and they want to get somebody to create a mural. and came out right away. We said the Art Honor Society.
Honor Society, yeah.
And I remember what they did for the Claflin Hill Orchestra when they came down. It was unbelievable.
Right.
The locusts came in, kids with brushes and paint.
Yeah.
And then
Carol and
it
Ted
was
so-
enjoyable just to sit back and watch the creativity. Because again, I have zero ability in art. So to watch these kids just attack a blank wall.
Yeah, they had their art show in the spring. It's incredible. The art, and that's just like the music program. They go first grade, I think it starts, first to 12, and with just all different art exhibits. It's phenomenal.
And the
Phenomenal.
one thing that I've seen in Milford that I'll put up against anybody is the commitment of the staff. We've got teachers. I remember when my oldest, ungrateful offspring #1, went to Milford High, and her biology teacher, Francis Jablonski, and that was my biology teacher. And there he still was teaching the same way. And I laughed. I said, well, I already warned her about you, that you never grade fairly. And he looked and said, really? I said, yeah, you never would give 100 if your life depended on it. You always cheated us out of 1 or 2 points. And he goes, really? I said, I mean, same with my daughter. She's got a 97. What's that about? He goes, kept you on your toes, didn't it?
That's right.
And it really did. You know, or Miss Longo, who somehow 30 years later, or 20-some years later, I came back into, back then, Middle School East, and she somehow remembered that I had made a comment to her that, why am I studying French? I'll never use French. You know, it's not going to be of value to me. And then says, by the way, where were you living for 4 years? I said, Paris. But, you know, it's amazing that these teachers still remember. You know, when you think of people like Uncle Paul, you know, Paul Raftery, could you get somebody more committed to kids? And that, to me, is the strength of Milford. You know, because we build on our staff. Got to talk about budget. I mean, your first time.
My first time.
And, you know, people here, because people keep coming up to me saying, well, you were in conflict with the school committee, weren't you? And I laugh. Because this happens every year. I think this year is just more public. But didn't we end up in the same place we always do?
And they're breaching a compromise in the end. And there's always going to be some natural friction, right? Because you have your role to play as a FinCom. You're looking out for the taxpayer, and we have our role to play as a school committee to advocate for the schools. So there's always going to be some natural friction, and like you said, every year you work through it, and eventually you reach a compromise.
I mean, we ended up with 2 point something on your operating budget, and we take care of SPED and ELL because you have no control.
Right.
You know, and in between, that's why I always love when people say, well, the town meeting is always so smooth. Everything, you guys never have any arguments.
Yeah.
It's like, you haven't seen the 6 months prior.
Right, it's true. That is true.
And at the end, shame on you if you're not advocating and trying to push the line as much as you can for the kids.
Right.
That's what you were elected for.
Yeah.
But I think the last 12 years, we always seem to come out. You know, you don't get everything you want. We have to give more than we started with, and we remember that it's all about 4,200 of our kids.
Right.
Any last comments for parents? I'm wondering, why should I send my kid to Milford? What would you say?
I think what I'm most proud of when I walk into a Milford school is the attention that everyone seems to get, and that's parents, that's students, anybody that walks in. You're made to feel like you belong there. It's just welcoming environment all the way around, and I think where we're going now in terms of academics and with Chromebooks, I think it's only going to get better.
Joe?
Yeah, I would agree. You know, we talked a lot about the importance of parental involvement, but I think we could say the same thing about the students. Be engaged. You have so many opportunities in front of you within the Milford School District. Get involved in sports, get involved in music, art, volunteer in the community. the more engaged you are, the more you're going to enjoy school, the more successful you're going to be. So that's the thing I take the most pride in, is knowing that we have so much to offer across the board, and that, to your point, there's something for everyone. And so, I just encourage every student to take advantage of that.
Well, the real question is, where do you send your kids?
Milford High School and Stacy Middle School.
I mean, at the end of the day, you're on the school committee. If anybody gets to see the warts of the schools, because no school's going to be perfect, it's y'all.
Right.
So asking you where are you sending your kids, really, you can say all you want, but that speaks legends of data to me.
Well, I don't live in town, and my youngest are coming to Milford.
Even more so.
The other thing I'll add, in terms of why people should send their kids here, is you look at a lot of districts around here, and maybe some that you referenced earlier, where it's just, this is the way we do it in this town, this is the way we do it in this town. Doesn't matter what parents think. I've never seen that happen in Milford. What I've seen is people who are open to listening, people who are open to change, a district that's open to growth and improvement. And I think the things that we have here in our district right now, I would hold up right in line with any of the other districts that have a more homogeneous population, that have maybe a wealthier clientele. We are doing all of the right things in terms of what educational research tells us is right for kids. And I've never heard anyone say we're there, because we're not there. You're never going to be there if you're continually growing and striving to get better. But I think we're in a place where people have that as their philosophy and their attitude. And to me, that speaks volumes.
Well, I mean, we just finished Woodland. And people came immediately and said, well, why are you putting more money in stabilization? I said, because there's a school coming. In 8 or 10 years, we're starting now to work with the school committee saying, okay, guys, the high school, she's been a great building. I still think fundamentally it's a great building.
Yeah.
But, 40 years later, time to expand. But we're starting now to plan what do we need in 8 to 10 years. That, to me, is the way Milford grows in a controlled, efficient manner. Because we're already going to you saying, okay, we know we need a field house. We know we need space. How are we going to do this in 8 or 10 years?
Yeah, we just engaged a consultant to help us with the long-range planning process. So we're going to start NASDAQ. Yeah. So there's a lot of work being done there. And to your point, we've got to start having those conversations now.
Well, when we finished Brookside, we immediately started planning for Woodland. And for many years, people were saying, what are you doing? I said, there's a school coming. And here we are, just finishing Woodland, year 1, and we're already talking about a decade from now or 8 years from now, the new high school.
Right.
Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And as always, the key to getting a great education in Milford is get involved. Somehow, the school committee, the school administration will deal with questions and help you, whether you're a single parent with no time or an old man who's just interested like me. Call this central office, get a hold of your principal, and get to know what Milford offers. Because I think if you really look at what Milford offers, there's no town around any better. So as always, thank you to our 6 loyal viewers. Hopefully 4 of them have kids in school. And may tomorrow be a better day than today. May God bless. Good night.
Not too long since I've been home. Been running all my life just